Ready to get to it?
Yeah, let's do it.
The East, Bob. Here's the little synopsis. An operative for an elite private intelligence firm finds her priorities changing dramatically after she is tasked with infiltrating an anarchist group known for executing covert attacks upon major corporations. It's directed by Zal Batmangli, who I've honestly never heard of, even after checking out his very few past credits. And he and Britt Marling wrote the screenplay. It stars Britt Marling, Alexander Skarsgård, and Ellen Page. Hit us with your mini review, Bob.
So here's what I thought. I gave The East a 4 out of 5, and this is what I said. Loved the ambitious plot focused on corporate espionage mixed with eco-terrorism, and was genuinely intrigued through most of this indie film, even if, ironically, the ending seemed to revert back to Hollywood contrivance. There you have it.
Right on. I guess I'll give you mine.
Yeah, let's hear yours.
The East, a plucky indie thriller with a refreshing story and some good understated performances. The payoff is a bit forced, but the ride's a good one. Seems actually kind of similar to what you said.
Yeah. Hey, what did you give it on the scale? Not that that's the most important thing, but I want to know.
I was saving till the end, but you want to hear already, huh?
Well, okay, we can wait if you want.
No, that's fine. 3.5. 3.5
Okay.
stars. That's one of our closer ones, actually.
Yeah. Well, it was teetering for me too. I jumped to the 4 out of 5 band, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, this one comes down to expectations, right?
Right.
Am I thinking about on the same terms of as some polished director and crew and team and studio-backed film, or am I looking at it like an indie film? And the more I give it credit as an indie film, just the more it's just a fun little ride.
Right.
But I wanted to talk about the backstory here. That's one of the reasons we decided to watch this. Britt Marling, she's the star and the screenwriter, and she has a cool backstory. She, way back to out of college, she was offered a job with Goldman Sachs, but she decided to leave that and go to Hollywood to act instead. And she kept getting jobs as, the cute blonde in horror movies, but she got tired of that, so she decided to learn screenwriting so she could play the kind of characters that she wants to play. I think it's pretty cool. I think a lot of us have a secret screenplay writer inside us, and she exercised that and made it happen.
Absolutely. It's safe to say that I wish I were her, well, the male equivalent or whatever, but it seems like a pretty cool gig to have that kind of story. Maybe it's a harder road than it seems like when we just recap it like that, but I don't know. Writing screenplays and starring in your own movies, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, living the dream, I gotta say.
Right, yeah.
So let's talk about the screenplay, this story. You mentioned that you liked it a lot, and you're right, those themes of eco-terrorism and corporate espionage. I don't see a lot of movies about those things. So, new is good sometimes.
Right.
And in this case, I think it was.
Yeah, I agree. It sort of got worse as the story progressed in some ways, but subtly worse. Like, it was solid throughout most of it until the ending, which I'm sure we'll get to because we both had issues with it. But overall, it held its own. The pacing was good. Lots of maybe semi-contrived situational things for the point of moving the story forward, but never felt that forced. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I liked, I've been paying a lot of attention to story this summer, and I thought there was a pretty good old-fashioned story here. She starts young and green. She makes some realizations about different people and about herself, and then she uses that newfound knowledge to make choices about how she's going to act and has to overcome unexpected antagonists and her former self. So, nice classic story. It's nice to see just a straightforward story because everyone seems to want to do something different these days.
Right. I mean, it was pretty hardcore in the sense that she got a pretty elite position, if you will, that lots of applicants, and they made a point of it being semi-special, I guess, and she goes undercover and has to be with this eco-terrorist group and make sure they don't know who she really is, and so it's kind of like part, 24 plot, part Wall Street. I don't know. There are a lot of themes because it had the corporate theme, it had the undercover FBI sort of theme, even though the FBI wasn't involved. It's a private business that was doing this. So kind of intriguing, joining a lot of different genres.
Yeah, maybe when you're offered a job at Goldman Sachs out of college, you don't think something like that seems so hard to get.
Yeah, maybe so.
No, you're right. It was pretty intense. Um, uh, yeah, and I liked it. I liked that intensity, just the hardcore nature of it, but also the plausibility of it somehow. I mean, it probably is sensationalized, but James Bond in MI6 or whatever, he's got all the technology and resources and everything. But this seemed like, I bet something sort of along these lines actually exists in sort of this way.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, it was pretty self-aware too, in terms of, eco-terrorism not being the most justifiable thing for young kids to be doing. So that was nice too. It wasn't like trying to make a political statement, painting with a broad brush like Hollywood often can do. There were nuances and complications involved with all parties involved, so I like that aspect as well.
Yeah. So let's get to that payoff at the end, Bob. What did you think of it? The decision she finally makes.
Well, okay, I guess we need to keep this spoiler free, right?
Yeah, that'll be a little bit tricky, but let's give it a shot.
So here's the problem with the ending. Well, I said it in my mini review. All throughout the movie, it's very plausible and lots of tension, rising tension, as different characters kind of show off why they're involved in this eco-terrorism, and the story unfolds around each of them. Um, and then at the end she has to make a complicated decision on who to choose, and as a viewer you're wondering, like, is she going to go back on this private espionage company she's working for, um, and that's paying her salary basically, and this is her moment to prove herself and join the system, so to speak, or is she going to do a Dances with Wolves and join the other side, her her captors or whatever, or her new friends. um, and the movie kind of wants to have it both ways. I guess we just have to leave it at that. It like wants to show like a third way that's like brilliantly amazing, which is really just Hollywoodish more than like brilliantly amazing to me. Is that too
Yeah.
much? Did I say too much?
Well, I think you. The only problem is with what I prepared to say the spoiler free. If you combine the two, then it might be trickier. so,
Like a puzzle.
so anyway, I'll
Oh,
try. I'll try to do my best. But uh, yeah. So uh, I had two skeptical reactions initially, but eventually I put them in the nitpicking category and didn't let them bother me too much. But it was still something you got to wrestle with. So
hmm.
the first reaction was trying to say this without spoiling. When person makes that kind of decision about whose team to be on or not be on, my first question is, well, how are you still supposed to have the resources to do what we saw her doing over the end credits?
Yes, that was a big problem. Yeah.
And then also, I felt like the two competing polls on her loyalty, they both became like less complex, and they were less nuanced.
Less compelling. Yeah, it's almost like, well, I don't want you to be with them or them. Hmm.
Right, and so the choice became easier as the movie went on instead of having to have her be a tough, hard decision to make.
Yeah, which is too bad because it kind of does this almost superhero-like plot spin thing, which again is maybe riding the line here with me not wanting to reveal too much, but it's like so plausible and you think it's going to be difficult, and this is one of those movies where you could almost see two different endings with one of them being on the DVD, but then they do this ending that's like, I mean, it's not what you expect, but it is what you expect once you see it. You're like, okay. So that's where, the 1 star gets knocked off for me. I really liked like the first 2/3 of it. I mean, there were still some other things I could nitpick on, but what it was trying to accomplish, I thought it was doing really well until it tried to wrap it up with a pretty bow and make it work itself out just way too nicely at the end.
Yeah, I think if we would have just ended with her in the bathroom, that final scene, just been the very end right there, it might have been stronger, even though
Oh
it would have
yeah.
felt a little bit like left
Huh?
hanging.
What's
But I
gonna
think
happen?
I think
Yeah.
it would have been stronger.
Yeah, I guess people are a little nervous about doing the Inception top spinning ending or whatever, where everyone's
Uh,
wondering what's really going to happen. Anyway.
let's talk about the acting performances. I think it was a cool little crew of actors. I mean, I liked seeing Alexander Skarsgård as a leader of the anarchist group. He's one of the best parts of True Blood, even in True Blood's fallen state. and it was pretty good here, I thought.
Yeah, he
Um,
did a great job.
and also Ellen Page is the heart and soul of the little group there. I thought their relationship and interaction was probably the most vivid of the whole movie. It gave a nice spark of dramatic tension that drove things forward.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I have mixed feelings about Ellen Page, not because she doesn't seem charming and fun and like a great person, but just because she feels like herself now more and more in movies. But that just could be because she's, getting into the popular stage and is somebody I've seen quite a bit. But she didn't seem like she was acting as much as playing herself, maybe? Is that too harsh? But a good version of herself, I don't know.
You just kept saying pregnant teenager, huh?
Yeah, it's like, hey, it's Juno, or the girl from Juno. Yeah, I don't know.
And I must say, though, Britt as Sarah was perhaps my least favorite. And it disappoints me to say that because I wanted to like her, I wanted to like everything about her for living the dream that we were talking about.
Sure.
But I just couldn't get what she was going for a lot of the time. I remember there's a scene when Britt Marling as Sarah, she has to help perform a medical procedure on one of the group, and the camera has these shots where it takes a long time focusing on her and her reactions and her emotions, but I kept staring like I'm not sure what emotions he's trying to give, and then it would like pan to Alexander Skarsgård as Benji again, and like, oh, I see a lot in what he's giving us, and then back
Yeah.
to Sarah, like I don't get it. What is she trying to do? I felt there were several instances kind of like that.
Well, she had the most complicated character, but I agree with you that there were a lot of times where it was almost like too nuanced or too like, are you happy or are you sad? Or which team are you? You're kind of nothing because you're everything. Kind of that sort of problem. So whatever. Too bad.
Yeah. Um, there's one other scene, come to think of it, now that I'm mentioning scenes. One of the things I really liked about it, there were a few very delightful scenes that helped us get the feel for things. Like there was one around the table and a dinner in straitjackets that just was like visually appealing, and also I could feel why she got upset at how things went. But the other one that I wanted to really bring up was like they played this game of spin the bottle. It's like a modified spin the bottle game. I guess it's like a kind of team building exercise or something, and it had extra rules though, because basically you can suggest any kind of physical contact, and the other person can either accept that or suggest another. And it was good because it was just off enough that I felt like I imagined Sarah felt, and that, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. And every new point, like, do I believe that this is what they would do? Yeah, maybe so. You just got to know them in an interesting way. I thought that scene was very effective.
Yeah, and there was another scene in a similar vein where they go in a river and they wash each other, which probably on the surface sounds kind of weird, and maybe it is a little weird, but the way they portray it, it's just this group of people really trying to connect on a different plane or be leaderless and helpful one to another while accomplishing their goals. And they showed a few of those types of scenes, and I thought it sort of painted the picture pretty well on what was going on with this group. Now, the one thing that it did do, though, towards the ending, is it was just kind of a weird contrast for me to see, especially the main leader of the group, in his high tension state and just like he's a normal dude, like because you almost see this group at the beginning and it's like, oh, it's Jesus leading his followers, and then by
Got the
the end you're
long
like,
hair.
yeah, yeah. And then by the end, you're like, oh, they're just normal and they're just like weird on weekends. There's just almost too much contrast between. I wanted them to handle tighter situations more differently because they were trying to live this alternate lifestyle, but they just maybe that's part of the point, I guess, as I'm thinking out loud. Maybe they just reverted back to their own selves in those moments.
I feel like it was kind of the point, or at least partially. And I actually feel like that's a little bit more of a spoiler than you may have realized.
Oh,
Although now the fact that I'm calling it a spoiler probably is what amplifies it even more. But I thought it was interesting, like some of the stuff that Patricia Clarkson, her boss says to her. It's sort of leading down that same path, and I think it helps affect her decision at the end.
yeah, maybe so.
Anything more you want to say about it? I think that about does it for me. Again, 3.5 stars for me. I liked it pretty well. If I could keep it in the perspective of a charming little indie flick.
Yeah, same for me. Maybe I liked it a little bit more. I'd recommend it to anyone looking for something different. It's not going to make you laugh, so don't go for laughs. But it's not like depressing or boring. It keeps you engaged and interested, and I enjoyed it enough, even though I had some issues with it. There you go.